You're working harder than ever, longer hours, more pressure, less rest, and yet, somehow, it still feels like you're falling behind. Not a little behind, not just need one more good month behind, genuinely, quietly, exhaustingly behind. Like, no matter how much you put in, the finish line keeps moving. Like, you're running full speed just to stay in the same place. And the worst part? You can't even explain it properly. Because on paper, you're doing everything right. You're showing up, you're grinding, you're not lazy, you're not reckless. So why does it feel like this? That's the question we're going to answer today. And I'll warn you, the answer isn't what most people expect. It's not about working harder. It's not about discipline. It's not about cutting out coffee or waking up at 5 in the morning. It's something deeper, something that's been quietly shifting underneath all of us for years. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Let's start with a normal day. You wake up, and before you're even fully conscious, there's already something waiting for you. A notification, a task you didn't finish yesterday, a number in your head, what you owe, what you need, what's coming at the end of the month. You get up anyway. You move through the morning. Maybe you have coffee. Maybe you don't have time. You work. You actually work hard. You push through the tired. You get things done. And then the day ends, and you check your account, and the number is fine. Or maybe a little short. Or maybe it's okay, but next week looks rough. And you think, okay, I'll push harder next week. So you do. And then that week ends, and you're back in the same place. You're waiting for the weekend like it's oxygen. But even the weekend doesn't fully restore you anymore. Sunday evening arrives, and you can already feel Monday pressing against you. This is the life that millions of people are living right now. Not a dramatic life, not a crisis. Just this low, constant pressure that never quite releases. And what makes it so hard to talk about is that it doesn't look like suffering from the outside. You're functional, you're responsible, you're handling it. But inside, there's this persistent feeling that something is wrong, that no matter how hard you try, you're never quite stable, never quite ahead, just running. Here's the belief most of us are carrying around without realizing it. If I just work harder, eventually I'll get there. Eventually I'll feel stable. Eventually I'll feel ahead. Eventually the pressure will ease. And here's the thing. That belief made sense. For a long time, it was actually true. A few generations ago, the deal was simple. You work hard, you get paid, your wages grow, your life gets more manageable. You put in the hours, and the hours reward you back. Time and effort translated almost directly into progress. That was the agreement. That was the logic that built the whole idea of what it means to be responsible and hardworking. And so we inherited it. We were taught it. We watched our parents live by it. We built our entire self-image around it. Work hard, keep going, don't complain, it'll pay off. But something changed. And it didn't change overnight. It crept in slowly, so slowly that most people didn't notice until they were already exhausted. The cost of living started rising faster than wages. Not slightly faster, significantly faster. Housing, food, healthcare, transportation, childcare, the basic things that life requires, got more expensive year after year. Quietly, persistently. At the same time, work itself changed, the boundaries blurred. You're reachable now in ways you weren't before. Your phone carries your job everywhere you go. The weekend became a suggestion. Rest became something you had to justify. And the pressure to earn more never went away. It just grew more sophisticated. More subscriptions, more expectations, more of life requiring payment to access, so you started working more. Naturally, logically, because that's what the equation seemed to require. But here's what the equation doesn't account for. There's a ceiling on how much you can work. There are only 24 hours in a day. There's only so much your body can do before it starts breaking down. There's only so much your mind can process before it starts making mistakes, missing things, losing sharpness. You can push past those limits for a while. Most people do. But you can't do it forever. And the longer you do it, the more it costs you in ways that don't show up in your bank account. This is where psychology comes in. When you're under sustained pressure, real, ongoing, unrelenting pressure, your brain does something fascinating and destructive at the same time. It shifts into survival mode, not dramatically, not obviously, But something changes in how you think and feel. You stop planning, you start reacting. Long-term thinking gets pushed aside because the short-term demands are too loud. Every decision becomes about managing the immediate problem in front of you. And here's what happens to motivation under those conditions. The brain stops registering progress. Even when you're doing things, moving things forward, getting things done, it doesn't feel like progress. Because in survival mode, the goal isn't to advance. The goal is to not fall further back. So you work, but you don't feel the satisfaction of working. You finish things, but you don't feel the relief of finishing them. You earn, but you don't feel the security of earning. It's called the treadmill effect. You're moving, sometimes faster than ever, but the scenery doesn't change. And over time, that feeling does something serious to a person. It creates a kind of numbness, a quiet cynicism, a part of you that stops believing the effort is going to lead anywhere new. That's not weakness. That's not laziness. That's what happens to a human being when they've been running hard without rest and without visible reward for too long. That's burnout, not the dramatic collapse version, but the slow, gray, everyday version that most people just call how life is. I want you to pause for a second and think about something. When you go to work, whether it's a job, a business, freelance, whatever it is, what are you actually selling? Most people say time, and that's partly right. But it's not the whole picture. You're not just selling your time. You're spending your life energy. Every hour you work is an hour of your actual life, your attention, your physical capacity, your mental clarity, your presence. These things are not infinite. They don't replenish fully with sleep. They are genuinely, measurably limited. And when the system asks you to spend more and more of that energy just to stay in place, not to get ahead, not to build toward something, just to maintain the same position, that's not a productivity problem. That's a structural one. The issue isn't that you haven't tried hard enough. The issue is that you've been applying maximum effort inside a framework that was never designed to reward effort alone anymore. Let me show you two people. Same age, same starting income, similar pressure on their lives. The first person does what feels natural. When things get tight, they work more. When the pressure increases, they increase their output. When the month is short, they grind harder the next month. They react, they respond, they hustle. And they're not wrong to do that. It's a reasonable response to the situation, and in the short term, it works. But 5 years later, they're tired. Not catastrophically, just deeply, persistently tired. And they're still in roughly the same place financially, because everything they earned, they spent on staying alive, staying afloat, staying functional. The second person does something different. Not easier, different. They don't work dramatically more. But they start thinking about structure. They look at where their money goes, and they cut the things that aren't serving them, not arbitrarily, but strategically. They start putting even small amounts somewhere that works while they sleep. They look for ways to make their skills or their time go further, not by adding more hours, but by directing their effort more precisely. They build slowly, imperfectly, with setbacks. But 5 years later, they have something the first person doesn't. They have a little bit of cushion, a little bit of margin, and because of that margin, the pressure is slightly less. And because the pressure is slightly less, they can think more clearly. And because they think more clearly, they make slightly better decisions, and that gap keeps widening. Same effort, same discipline, different direction. This is the realization that changes everything. Hard work matters. Let's be honest about that. Hard work is not optional. You cannot build a stable life on wishful thinking or passive hope. But hard work without structure is just survival. You can be the most disciplined, most dedicated, most relentless worker in the room and still end up exhausted and financially fragile in 10 years. If all of that effort is going into output without ever building any kind of foundation. The treadmill doesn't slow down because you run harder on it. It slows down when you step back and ask whether this is even the right machine. And most people never ask that question, not because they're not smart enough, but because they're too tired to stop. Because stopping feels dangerous when the pressure is constant. Because thinking about the bigger picture feels like a luxury when the immediate picture is so demanding. But here's what I want you to understand. That's exactly the trap. That feeling, I'll figure this out when things calm down, is the thing that keeps things from calming down. So what does the other path actually look like? It's not complicated. It doesn't require you to become a different person. It doesn't require you to suddenly have a lot of money or a lot of free time. It starts with one shift in thinking. Instead of asking, how do I earn more? Ask, how do I make what I earn do more? That's a different question. And it leads to different answers. It means building systems, small, sustainable ones, that reduce the chaos in your life instead of just adding more effort to manage it. It means being intentional about where your money goes instead of reacting to where it went. It means putting even a small portion of your earnings into something that compounds over time, so that eventually, gradually, imperfectly, your money starts working alongside your time instead of just sitting still while you carry everything alone. It means protecting your energy with the same seriousness that you protect your income, because you cannot produce value indefinitely if you're depleted. Rest is not a reward for getting ahead, it's a requirement for staying in the game. None of this is glamorous. None of this happens fast. And I won't pretend that structural changes in how you manage money and time will erase the pressure immediately. They won't. But they shift the direction. And direction is what matters most when you're talking about years, not weeks. You're not weak for feeling exhausted. You've been trying to outrun a system that never slows down. A system that keeps moving the threshold, that keeps raising the cost of simply existing. That tells you the answer is more effort, more hustle, more hours, more output, without ever questioning whether the framework itself is the problem. And you believed it, because you were raised to believe it, because it once made sense, because the people who told you to work hard weren't lying to you, they were just living in a different time with a different set of conditions. You're not failing. You're responding rationally to an irrational amount of pressure. But responding rationally to pressure isn't the same as building a life you can sustain. And that's the difference. That's what this is really about. So let me leave you with this. The exhaustion you feel isn't evidence that you need to work harder. It's evidence that you've been working hard in a direction that doesn't compound, that the effort has been real. The sacrifice has been real. The discipline has been real. But discipline without direction is just endurance, and you were never meant to just endure. So before you commit to another cycle of grinding harder, doing more, pushing further, take a breath and ask yourself the question most people are too scared to sit with. What if working harder was never supposed to be the thing that saved you? What if the answer was never more effort, but smarter structure, slower building, and finally believing that your time and your energy are worth protecting? That question won't solve everything overnight, but it might be the one that finally changes the direction. And direction, over time, changes everything.